What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Veil. Today, I got a pretty awesome guest, all the way from Heartland Harbor. We've got Jesse Doyle. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain. I've been doing a lot of running around today, yesterday, and pretty much a whole week now. So I'm trying to fit everything into the schedule, make everything fit in this weird puzzle that we call life.
Yeah, it's crazy times.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Jesse, would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm Jesse Doyle from Heartland Harbor. I originally come from Georgia, and Heartland Harbor is what we call our little homestead here in northern Indiana. Um, we seem to have some little people interesting things and some spirits up in the woods by the river. I think most of it's pretty natural and uh, not too related to human trauma. And we got berries and apples and peaches and pears and plums. And I hope everyone comes out here and sees us and visits our little people and visits us. And yeah, we were trying to kind of make it go without Uncle Sam being all on our backs.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's very important to be able to pick from the land, right? Obviously, not pick too much from land, but whatever you can produce from the land, planting your own crops, planting your own food, being able to hunt your own game, pretty much survivalist lifestyle. I think it's important.
Yeah, we don't ever want to find ourselves dependent on people who don't care about us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Jesse, how's your morning going?
Oh, pretty good. I just get up and play with my daughter a little bit and send her off to school and I got an hour or two to get ready myself before I go to work. Go
Nice.
out and take care of the yard and pick the berries and pick up all the walnuts and just take care of things.
Very nice. Very nice. What are some of your favorite hobbies to do when you're on your time when you're not super engaged with work?
Oh, I practice some Tai Chi and yoga just to stay in shape and keep flexible. But for the weight part of the exercise, I got plenty of work to do around here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an absolute chore or work in its own. It's a full body workout at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 40, so 8 hours on the shovel doesn't go as easy as it used to.
Nope, definitely not. I can agree with that. I can agree with that. So, Jesse, let's get into some of these things. You came to me and you said I want to share my story. I haven't really shared it before, so we're gonna dive into it. When was the first time that you started noticing paranormal activity, or you started believing in it?
I suppose I always had a fascination. I was always kind of raised around it. I mean, it wasn't even an unusual thing to most people I was raised around. They were backwoods country, and these were just folk traditions to them. But nonetheless, I mean, when a cloud passed over the moon on a certain night, you'd see a face in it reliably. When there was an old rope they used to leave hanging from the tree across the street, and I asked why, because they were like, because somebody was hung there, and you never take the rope down. Um, it was just a, it was just a weird place to grow up. Um, I got a great one. My step grandmother, she used to go out every day and she'd pick these tacks up out of the driveway. We asked her why. Her mother-in-law had thrown down the tax back when the revenuers came to town in the last turn of the century, and she said, if anyone pulls into this driveway that's not related to us, they'll get a flat tire. So for 90 years, she's going out there picking up these tacks. We pulled into the driveway every day, never had a flat tire. We had to warn other people, don't pull into the driveway. After my mom divorced my stepdad, we forgot. We pulled into the driveway, two flat tires.
Oh, geez. Oh my. Wow. That's wild. Some of these traditions and practices that are done in some of the more obscure locations. Once you step out into society, you look and you're like, "That's not normal." Is that something that you like that you and ended up happening to you? Like you stepped out into society and you're like, "Well, okay, that's abnormal."
For sure. And I've never been one to pick up on when I should be doubting myself and not just running my mouth, and people will be having a conversation, I'll be like, "Oh, you need to get rid of that wart. You rub a penny on it, you throw it behind your back, you never look in that direction again." I think I'm giving people useless advice, useful advice, but um, yeah, and sometimes they look at you a little weird.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand. I myself, I come from backwoods here in Maryland, Civil War territory. You grew up in, I'm pretty sure, Civil War territory as well.
Yeah.
So some of those old traditions that started way back when are still carried and sometimes altered, and sometimes changed. What do you find the most odd from that period in your life? Like, you look back and you're like, oh man, that was really weird.
Well, thing that springs to mind, I really can't talk about, but they are. I mean, they were. Most of them were really good people, practically saintly people. People that just talked about how they didn't mind living in the woods because their home was on the other side, and
Yeah.
they taught me all about medicine plants and just living in harmony with nature. And when I was young and in my 20s, and I kind of wished my parents had provided me with a more traditional, a more normal upbringing for our century. But now I'm really glad I went through all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of thing when I transitioned from where I lived in this small community, like it's a community of maybe 10 families, um, and I transitioned out of that. I had a hard time actually with that transition, adjusting to life outside of that. I went from backwoods Maryland to big city Pennsylvania, and it was a culture shock. Is that something you went through?
Oh, for sure. Somebody will do some minor insult to you at work and laugh about it, and you're like, "Hey, where I come from, I'd be putting you in a hole right now, but I'm gonna have to just chill."
Right, right. We got to keep it. We got to keep it calm around here.
Yeah.
Um, so were there any like odd coincidences, like you see a spirit or you feel an energy transfer in that area when you were younger?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, so the community that you grew up in, did they believe in like the supernatural and the paranormal and stuff like that?
Oh yeah. If you had told Granny that what she was doing was witchcraft, she would have kicked you out of her house because she was a strong Christian. But there's no doubt that, some of it bordered on that. It sure wasn't coming out. It came more from her Native American traditions than it did from the Bible. But you know, y- Paul didn't have a problem with that. When he went and spoke to the Greeks, he spoke to them in Greek. I
Hmm.
believe it was Paul. It's you can't expect people to come all the way in one lifetime. She starts where she starts. I start where I start. We make it as far as we can, and then we die.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I agree with that. So you move out of the community that you're in, and you start transitioning in some of the more contemporary lifestyles outside of that. What is that like for you, like the transition and stuff like that?
Oh, well, I started as I was there as an intellectual, and then I left there as an intellectual and went into college and studied all the things that college students study, from the humanities and comparative religions to chemistry and physics, and spent good 7 years there studying absolutely everything and getting no useful degree. Um, and uh, and it is all related. Everything that you learn from the metaphysics is being substantiated in the real physics now. Now that we're getting down to the quantum mechanics level, and same thing for religion. There's never been a contradiction in truth. Truth is truth, and if we're seeing contradictions, then we're misunderstanding something.
Yeah, definitely. I have this common belief that religion and science back each other up, whether they choose to accept it or not. They back each other up, and there's evidential proof that events in the Bible happened through science, right? And through archaeology and stuff like that.
These are smart people that run religion and run science and run politics and all these other things. I am beginning to suspect that everyone out there knows they're telling a deliberate half truth to keep them in battle with the guy who's telling the other half of the truth, just so that they can keep their cushy jobs.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. You mentioned when we started talking about you coming on, you were talking about different levels of reality and different levels of dimensions. What are some of those things that you can talk about that you feel comfortable talking about?
Oh, for sure. I'd be glad to answer any questions about that. I've always been, I mean, some people just say head in the clouds, but some people are just kind of living with another one foot on the other side. They're just not quite fully engaged on this side, and it comes with its upsides and downsides. Sometimes the past and the future don't appear so delineated to me. I mean, I my grandmother, who was a really strong Christian woman who didn't believe in anything that was outside of, her church and her small community. She didn't know anything about all this stuff and didn't like it. And one day she was sitting there telling me a story about when they were building my uncle's house, because my grandfather was a carpenter and he built all their houses. And I looked and I was like, you don't have to tell me this story. I remember you had to shut down for the winter because construction was delayed, and that's where the porta potty sat, and that's where this and that. And she said, you don't remember that. You weren't born yet. I made her go get the receipts. I'm like, I remember exactly. I can tell you the story. And even she was freaked out. She's like, okay, maybe you are weird.
Yeah, I have this understanding that like the soul will take you back to the place that you need to be regardless, right? So for instance, I moved away from home, and not saying that the journey back home for everybody is their destination, right? Because we're not all put on this earth in the exact place we need to be. Um, but for years, I spent away in my life with chaos and havoc, and the moment that I put myself back here, everything, all of that chaos, all of the madness, everything disappeared, right? And it doesn't come without problems, but the problems that I once had aren't the problems that I have now. And the problems that I have now aren't even like problems. They're like, oh, could be worse, you know?
That's fascinating that you found where your puzzle piece fits. I feel like at this point I'm never finding where my puzzle piece fits. I have to make the puzzle around me. But
Yeah.
that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, and, going into that, the dimensional layers that you alluded to, what can you speak on that? And
Sure.
what are some of those things that you were talking about?
Okay, well, most people probably realize by this point that the three-dimensional world we're seeing is a very limited representation of everything that's going on around us. Most people have studied that physics by this point. The And going on in those other realms, I can't fully comprehend it or visualize it any more than anyone with a three-dimensional mind can. Maybe some people, but there are other realms that people the visualization that people have created over the years through things like astral projection are fairly accurate. It seems, it's the lower one that seems to where a lot of the troublesome dead and the negative forces seem to hang out. And then are some higher levels, and then there are some levels that just kind of subtly overlap and interact with this. And that's where you find all your little sprites and UFOs and Bigfoots and little people and all that fun stuff. And I think that some of those have facility in choosing where to go. They're pretty good at steering where they want to go, and maybe can travel between the levels. They seem much more competent at it than we are. And when you run into them on the other side, and everyone knows their reaction, they look at you and they go, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah. I I'm starting to believe that there's more than quote unquote what meets the eye when it comes to life and reality, right? Um, because there's too many. It feels like at times we're living in a rip in the fabric of reality, right? You see birds that will stop and they're just there. They're not flapping their wings. They're just there. Or you'll see a random, and it's weird because it tends to happen in the sky. A plane that just flies over and it stops and it's not moving at all. And it's like, okay, are we living in the Matrix? Like, are we living in this weird uh, time space continuum? What is happening?
I don't even
You,
like to take airline flights. It's not very high up there, but there's something to this. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
there's something to that. And I think that, for instance, traveling to the moon, there's plasma physics involved there. There's fourth dimensional physics. You're not getting there with simple rockets in 2 dimensions.
no, no. And on top of that, you're floating in space. Like, let's be real. You're floating in space where there's no gravity and nothing is pushing you.
Yeah, that's far more than I think I can wrap my mind around, and I'd say more than they can wrap their minds around. And we know that, or I'm certain that they have other sources of intelligence that direct them in how to do these things. For evidence to that, you can just look at the massive jumps in technological advancement we've had at certain times in history, and then complete doldrums for 30 to 50 years afterwards.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at some of these like science fiction movies that have come out very recently and within the past 10, 15, 20 years. And I start to think like that could be an actual reality that we face. Like, yeah, it's cool. It's a fandom, but that's an actual reality we could face. Uh there's one that's called Pacific Rim, and it's about these monsters, kaiju, whatever you want to call them, Godzilla-like creatures coming up out of the ocean and destroying everything, absolutely everything. They build these monsters, or they build these pretty much huge Titan-like machines to fight off, the monsters coming out of the ocean. I don't think that's too far fetched because we haven't explored like 95% of the ocean.
Either way, that's a powerful allegory for our existence. Any monster comes out of the shadows and they tell us the solution is build it, let us build a different bigger monster.
Yeah, yeah. Let's build a bigger monster that man can control because man is fallible.
Oh yeah, because they won't turn on us, they won't hurt us at all.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, have you heard of the theory of the hollow earth?
Yes.
Do you believe in that?
Like I said, I think those discussions don't really lead anywhere very much. I think that yes, that is a good description of things. It's a lot more useful than a magma core for us lay people. Um, but I think that the reason that leads to endless debate is just because our three-dimensional physics doesn't work out. We're not a ball. We're just seeing it that way because we see things in 3 dimensions.
Yeah. You wouldn't believe how many people have never heard of hollow earth theory.
I mean, it's hardly even a theory at this point. If you look for the evidence, it's out there. There's plenty of it.
Oh yeah. I was talking to my girlfriend about it because she had never heard about it, and I said, "Yeah, there's openings all around the world where people have gone down, and they've only explored 6 miles into it. 6 miles of subterranean surface.
Yeah.
Tell me that there is not people living down there, and I will give you the rest of my paychecks for the rest of my life."
Yeah, it would be unusual if there weren't. There's people living in Alaska and it's less habitable, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So being in Indiana, in that little corner of Indiana that you live in, um, have you said small people at the beginning, and I'm confused. What does that mean?
Yeah, I hesitated. I wasn't sure I was going to mention that. But so when I moved out to this property, I kind of felt there was something back there. And there's kind of a clear delineation between when my yard ends and the wood begins. And then after a while, I noticed little things. The one that really convinced me was I took this cutting off an apple tree and I put root hormone on it and I went and I stuck it in the ground and watered it. And, I'm like, okay. So, and then I just totally forgot about it and went on and did other things. So a month or two later, I decided I'm going to go back there and check on my cutting on the apple tree. And
Mhm.
this is through 15 foot of poison oak, way off a trail. Nobody saw me plant it. And I go back there, and the thing has been trimmed. Somebody's cut off the apical merostem so that the roots would form better. Um, and I see it, like I'll go cut a trail, and then I'll come back 3 days later, and the first half of the trail will be perfect, and then there'll be a solid line of woods grown there, like it just completely dead ends. He's just going, nope, not this way.
Wow.
and and we've developed a pretty good relationship. And I give him little gifts, and he takes good care of the plants. And yeah, we had a couple of rocky moments. I didn't, we had to learn to live together, but we're getting along just fine now. And I don't know if it's him or a family, and I see their little burrows, and they seem to live underground.
Hmm.
Um, and I just try to mind my own business and leave them alone because they seem to make the plants grow like crazy.
Right, right. They tend to help. Do you think that it's a spirit or an actual being?
I suspect this is one of the ones that has the facility to shift very easily between players. So I suspect if he wants to have a physical being, he does.
Ah, and if he wants to maintain his anonymity, he can.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a few conversations. He can take physical form, or he can just kind of just float
Shift
off.
up.
And there
Yeah.
seems to be another one down there at the river. I realize there's a little bit of a hierarchy. He seems to have a boss, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, so this ties along the lines of something that I believe is that there's more ancient things in this world than we're able to comprehend, which goes back to the conversation of reality. You
Yeah,
know, there's so much more that's in this earth that we don't comprehend. Ancient beings or ancient entities
or
that we just go ahead.
even just our physical history. Our physical history isn't what we are told it is. This house is 125 years old, and I found evidence of two older structures back there, and there's parts of this foundation that are older than this house.
Wow.
There's no written history about what that is. Right? And you go in and I think most people know this. You go in the city, and there's a whole other floor built below the ground in almost every building. So
Oh yeah.
again, the history is not what we're told it is.
No, no. I definitely think that there is much more. Like I said before in this episode, there's much more to meets the eye in our reality than what we can actually comprehend. And I don't think that human beings are actually really able to comprehend that yet, because we're barely able to comprehend UFOs.
I agree, but I think that we're going to find our limits in the dimensional there as well. We're trying to use our three-dimensional hardwiring structural brain.
Mhm.
And when we come to the realization that that is not even where most, even just on a scientific level, that is not where most of our thinking comes from. Half of your emotions are coming from your organs, your liver, your stomach. Are you hungry? Are you mad? Are you tired? Are you? And
Yeah,
we're sitting here working up here, and so we haven't even incorporated the rest of the body, much less the spirit, soul.
yeah, absolutely. Now I know it's not too prevalent out in Indiana, but have you seen any UFOs out your way?
I have. I saw my first UFO here in Indiana. Um,
Wow.
so, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of relate that story I told you from when I was a
Go for
kid.
it. Go for it.
Um, so in my family, every time a child is born, there is some kind of supernatural event. Sometimes it's a plague of shadow people, um, and that's really scary the first time it happens. And But sometimes it's a UFO or something like that. And when I was born, it was a UFO. I was a couple of months old, sleeping in a crib, and my dad was driving home from work and with his friend following him, and apparently a UFO followed them home to work and came and hovered over the house. And my mom and there's a bunch of witnesses. Everyone came out, and then they thought, oh, the babies, and then they ran in and got us. So yeah, and so I don't remember that obviously, but yeah, I kind of wanted to see one my entire life and kept my eyes to the sky. I never did see anything until mid 2020. Me and my wife were sitting on the porch in our residence in downtown St. Clair. I mean, downtown Fort Wayne, and and we look off to the west, and there in the sky is an orange orb. It looks like a sunset. It's 11:30 at night. I don't even think anything about it at first. We're just getting our conversation. I'm like, "Oh, sunset. No, it shouldn't be sunsetting." And it's way above the horizon. So and then just as soon as I consciously think that, the thing like shifts like blue and then purple, just like a sunset going away, and then goes away probably 40 seconds.
Wow.
Um, and it was kind of behind some clouds, but I mean, it was an obvious orb in the sky of some kind, something glowing. And also, I will mention though that that was above a cell phone tower from my perspective,
Mhm.
and I think that their radiation from these cell phone towers messes with people's minds. So I'm not entirely sure you can trust anything you can see while you're staring at one of those.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's wild. I seen some in Alaska. Some things that are very unexplainable. I think the most prevalent one was I was driving, and where I lived, there was some woods you had to pass through in order to get to the store or gas station. So I'm driving, and I'm some reason something caught my attention in the sky, and I looked up, and there was three lights in a triangle, and like it was sitting there and completely still. Now I lived on an Air Force base, so it's not completely unnatural for aircraft to be in the sky, but not in a triangle formation with a color for. And mind you, like I worked closely with aircraft while I was in the army, right? Like I can differentiate what each aircraft, the pattern of their lights, and that wasn't anything that I had seen before in my life. And it was just like sitting there in the sky like this, like almost tilted, and it shifted like this and gone. I've never seen anything move that fast in my life. And I absolutely was like, "What did I just see?" And I called my dad because my dad believes in just about everything. I was like, "Dad, this is what I just seen," and he was like, "I don't doubt that you've seen it." And it was crazy. And then there was like weather events to follow that never happened in Alaska, happening in Alaska, right? Obviously, Alaska's. I mean, if you haven't lived in there, Alaska's really prominent for its earthquakes and mountains and snow. But we're getting thunderstorms and lightning storms. That doesn't happen in Alaska.
hmm.
Period. So, like in a weird way, that kind of shifted uh, the weather in Alaska, and I don't know if UFOs have that ability or that power, but it messed with something in the atmosphere.
I mean, I don't. It's hard to tell anything up there because the atmosphere itself is already so electrically active.
Yeah.
Um, and then of course they've got their Harper arrays, so who knows what all that's about too. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
On what?
On the Harper array?
Um, I haven't heard too much about it. Can you enlighten me on it?
Oh, I don't. I mean, I would assume that any military man would probably know more than I would. High altitude, amplitude. Anyway, they've got an array of electromagnetic antennas in Alaska that some
Oh,
people believe they use for weather modification and stuff like that. I do not know, but it's fascinating. I do believe that our governments, our terrestrial governments here, have experimented with technology to beam signals through the ionosphere, maybe for weather manipulation, maybe for individual manipulation, maybe for weapons technology. The fact that they claim that we don't have these things is ridiculous when I can sit here and figure it out at home and I know they're smarter than I am.
right. So, with the antenna bit, I can say that I have passed what we call the antenna farm, where it's just a ton, and I mean a ton, more antennas that I've ever seen in my life, just hanging around. There's fences around them. It's guarded by a compost or by a building that you have to have a secured, classification to get into a much higher level classification than I had. So yeah, that was definitely odd. I'll say that now that
Really?
you point that out. It was normal for me because I lived there and I was like, oh, there's the antenna farm. But now that you point it out, it's actually kind of odd.
Yeah.
I do know, and I did watch a report where there was a guy. I can't remember his name. I wish I remembered his name, but there's a scientist, or he had some level of exposure, and I guess he went to South Antarctica, and he was in charge of observing and maintaining certain degrees of equipment in South or the South Antarctica. But I mean, like, why are we there? One, two, two. He came out and said that the government has penetrated like deep down into the ice caps, and that there are signals that are reverberated through the earth that cause earthquakes. But then there's also light beams that shoot out from there that are meant as, lack of a better term, like a rail gun, right? Like it shoots a laser out that's meant to destroy whatever's in its path. And so that makes me question, like, if that's there, like, what's on the other side? What's in the north? I mean, we haven't really been able to hear anything from Antarctica to the north, but like, if it's happening in the south, what's going on in the north?
Yeah. All I know for sure about that is that we're not being told the truth, and well, that's just pretty much par for the course when it comes to the government.
Yeah, yeah, very true, very true. So going back to the small people and some of the things in the woods, is there any other weird instances that you had in the woods on your property or down by the river?
Um, yeah, other than them changing the trails and stuff like that, I have not had. Um, well, I mentioned that that they have a tendency to be involved in the births and deaths in my family.
Hmm.
Well, I had one of each. My daughter, she was born premature and didn't make it, and I noticed that right before and right after that time was a serious lull in activity. Whether that mean whatever that means, I don't know, but it decided to leave me alone and get let me get some peace. And
Yeah.
we do notice occasional things inside the house. There will be an occasional shadow thing, or every now and then my wife will hear something fall in the other room where she knows that nothing is. But it's a 125-year-old house. It'd be weird if there wasn't things here.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I believe that properties or um, houses or even like objects, hold some form of an energy. Because energy just can't be displaced and then go nowhere, right? It's got to
Exactly.
go somewhere.
We have the ability. We leave emotional imprints where we go, just like we leave physical imprints, and I think that gets kind of down to the heart of the matter. There's something very special about us that the negative forces of the world and the positive forces of the universe are very, very interested in.
Absolutely.
We need to be careful how we use it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I don't think it's too far fetched to say that the negative energy that we put into things that is destroying the earth.
Yeah, we're doing our best, and a lot of us are doing our best, and a lot of those people that are doing their best have other people they control. So in effect, they're trying to make all of us do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, your property, Harbor Heartland. Exactly is it?
Ah,
Is it like a
so
destination?
it is the antidote to what we just talked about. And it all it takes is little seeds here and there. We grow our own stuff. We do our own thing. We it's the mindset. It's that we don't ask for permission. We don't wait for somebody to come take care of us. If somebody has a problem with what we're doing, then we will politely deal with that the best way we can. And certainly, we don't mean to offend anybody or step on anybody's toes. That's what the opposite of what we're about. We're about being independent and being secure in our independence, not needing anybody. I mean, our neighbors are they're a bunch of really tough, hard people, but we don't rely on them, and they don't really rely on us. We're there if we need each other, give each other gifts and stuff. But anyway, so we formed a little co-op of about four of our friends right now are working on it pretty full time. And there's a couple extra that help out a little here and there. And we are at this point, we've prepared a couple of campsites on the property for people to come visit, and we've got our fruits coming in. We're getting our chickens in the spring, and then we're planning on goats in the next spring, and then we'll start bringing out field trips so the little kids can enjoy it. And we're donating our pumpkins to the schools and stuff like that. And we're taking our, because we don't have enough to really stay open full time and get people to try and come out here to us. We're taking our wares out to these little festivals and stuff on weekends and selling them
Nice.
just to get started.
Nice. To me, it sounds like you're doing. You have the mindset of the way the world used to be,
Yes.
where
And it
you
doesn't seem that long ago to me because my parents were throwbacks and their parents were throwbacks. So I've only really been living in civilization for about 10 years now. It's not that hard to give up.
yeah. I think that the way that you guys operate is amazing because um, we've as a society we've strayed away from helping our neighbors and giving back to our community and being a positive outlet for other people, and we've gone from this society where we used to look outward and help other people out to what can I get and how selfish can I be, and then you'll we'll take care of you. I think what you guys are doing is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very important, and I try to live my life the way that you do. You know, not so much as what can I get for myself, but what can I do for other people. Because um, one, it's fulfilling, right? You feel a sense of fulfillment and joy and happiness, but also on the back end, um, you're feeding into a community and you're giving the community what you have, so in turn that community starts pumping back into you. It's a give and take relationship.
Yeah, and if you dance with the devil, if you're willing to be selfish, then don't be surprised when he wants to control your life. If I know, and most of these people are conservative, church-going, normal people that aren't at all interested in the supernatural. But the fact is that if the federal government just said, "Well, I give up on this town, we're not helping anymore," we wouldn't even notice. We're fine.
Yeah.
Good riddance. We're tired of paying taxes.
Right. Yeah, I mean you guys are self-funding, self-fulfilling, and self-sufficient, and that's
If,
important.
if
And then
everybody did that, we could just laugh at the politicians. We don't have to worry about what they're doing.
absolutely, absolutely. So, brother, before we go, what advice would you give to somebody that is in the position that you're in, and they have some things that they've encountered that they don't understand?
Yes, that is a great question. Regardless of your beliefs, I think we're probably all familiar with the great heretics, Aleister Crowley and Israel Regardie. You know or maybe you think that they're hokey, and there's some even worse people out there. That's fine. But even people like that, they said when they were having trouble with negative forces, there were two things that worked: some really rare, hard to find, and hard to learn ancient Sumerian banishment practices, and the Lord's Prayer. And if the Lord's Prayer works for heretics like that, Christianity might be something worth taking a look at.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And where can we find you at?
Um,
Obviously, not physically. Like I don't want to send people to hunt you down, right? But like, where can we find you out on social media?
well, we'd be very welcome to have people eventually. We're out in Huntington, Indiana. And you can find us on Adventure Weekends or Heartland Harbor on Facebook. We'll have our real website set up soon. My wife has a little website called Sweet Jam Art at Store Envy, but the Facebook's probably the best place to find us for now.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Jesse, I want to thank you for sharing your experience with me and with us. I do appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for everything that you do for your community. It's important. If I haven't stressed it enough, it's important to feed into your community and in turn, show selflessness, and that's what you do. And I'm grateful for you.
Thank you.
All
Thank you for
right.
having me here. This was a great show. I hope you have a lot of success with it.
Thank you. And everybody, thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for listening to Jesse. Jesse's an awesome dude. If you want to go and check him out and check out what he's doing, his projects, go ahead and check it out. His links will be in the description. I love every single one of you guys. Be good. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Much love.